Being a little kid is a scary point in your life, yet you're too young and innocent to even realize it. I have a horrible memory from my early childhood that I wish I could simply block out completely, but I just can't. I was, I believe, 6 or 7 years old. I was at the summer rec program that my parents had signed me up for. I was in the 6 and 7-year-olds group, the youngest group at the camp. One day, our group was at the playground, and some oldish man sitting on a bench started talking to me. He knew my name. He didn't look like a monster. That's the thing movies get wrong. They teach you to look for the guy in the ski mask, or the one with the scarred face lurking in the shadows. They don't teach you to fear the guy in the beige polo shirt and cargo shorts, sitting casually on a park bench with a newspaper folded on his lap. He looked like a grandpa. He looked like a neighbor. He looked harmless. The summer rec program was held at a large public park that bordered a dense patch of woods on one side and a sprawling half-empty parking lot on the other. It was the mid-90s, a time when supervision was a little looser, and the counselors were mostly 16-year-old high schoolers just looking for a paycheck to buy gas and CDs. They weren't negligent exactly, just distracted. On this particular Tuesday, the heat was suffocating. The air shimmered off the asphalt, and the sound of cicadas was a constant drilling buzz in your ears. My group, about 15 of us, had been let loose on the playground. The counselors, a guy named Brad and a girl named Jessica, sat at a picnic table about 40 yards away, chatting and occasionally glancing up to do a head count. I was a quiet kid. I didn't like the roughhousing on the slides, or the king of the hill battles on the monkey bars. I preferred to dig in the wood chips near the edge of the play area, looking for cool rocks or beetles. I was isolated, physically and mentally, from the rest of the pack. That's what predators look for, I realize now. They look for the stragglers. I remember finding a particularly smooth white stone and wiping the dirt off it with my thumb. That's when I saw the shoes. Brown loafers slightly scuffed. I looked up. The man on the bench was smiling down at me. He had thinning gray hair and wire-rimmed glasses. He held a bottle of water in one hand. "Hot one today, isn't it, Michael?" he said. My stomach did a small flip. I hadn't told him my name. I looked down at my shirt, no name tag. We only wore those on field trip days. I looked at my backpack, which was piled in a heap with the other kids' bags near the swings, too far for him to read. "How do you know my name?" I asked, squinting against the sun. He chuckled, a soft, wheezy sound. "I work with your dad. Frank, right. Big guy works at the plant. My dad's name was Frank. He did work at the manufacturing plant 3 towns over." The tension in my chest loosened instantly. This wasn't a stranger. This was one of Dad's work friends. The logic of a 7-year-old is terrifyingly simple. If he knows facts, he must be safe. "Oh," I said, standing up and brushing the wood chips off my knees. "Hi. Your mom called the main office," he said, checking a silver watch on his wrist. His voice was calm, authoritative, but kind. "She's got a bit of an emergency with your little sister. She couldn't leave the house, so she asked me to swing by and pick you up early." I hesitated. My parents had drilled stranger danger into me, but they had also drilled respect your elders and do what you're told. This was a conflict of programming. "I have to tell Brad," I said, pointing toward the counselor at the picnic table. The man's smile didn't falter, but his eyes seemed to lose a bit of their warmth. "Brad knows, buddy. I already spoke to him. He said it's fine, just go ahead. We don't want to keep your mom waiting, do we? She sounded pretty upset." That was the hook. The mention of my mom being upset. Guilt and worry overrode protocol. I looked at Brad. He was laughing at something Jessica had said, his back partially turned to me. If this man had already talked to him, bothering him again might make me look stupid, or like a baby. "Okay," I said. "Good man," the stranger said. He stood up. He was taller than I expected. My car is just right over there near the tree line. AC is running. It's nice and cool. He didn't grab my hand. He didn't drag me. He just started walking, confident that I would follow, and I did. I fell into step beside him, clutching my smooth white rock like a talisman. We walked away from the playground, past the swing set where my backpack still lay. "My bag," I said, stopping. "We'll get it later," he said, his voice a little sharper now. "Don't worry about it. I've got snacks in the car." We were crossing the threshold of the safe zone. The playground was fenced on 3 sides, but the side facing the parking lot was open. As we stepped onto the hot asphalt of the lot, the sounds of the other children fading behind us, a sudden cold wave of wrongness washed over me. It was the gift of fear, that primal instinct that predates language. I looked at the man. He wasn't looking at me anymore. He was scanning the parking lot, his jaw set tight. He was walking faster. I had to trot to keep up with his long strides. "Where's your car?" I asked. My voice sounded small in the open air. Just there, he pointed toward a beat-up sedan, parked far away from the other cars, backed up against the dense woods that bordered the lot. The trunk was facing us. I stopped walking. "I don't see a car seat." My little sister needed a car seat. If he was picking us up, why wasn't there one? It was a stupid, trivial detail, but it was the glitch in the matrix that made my brain stall. The man stopped. He turned around slowly. The kindly grandpa act was evaporating. His face looked harder, sweat beading on his upper lip. "Michael," he said, his voice dropping an octave. It wasn't a request anymore. "Get in the car." "I want to ask Brad," I whispered, taking a step back. The man lunged. It wasn't a movie lunge. It was fast, desperate, and clumsy. He closed the distance between us in 2 strides and clamped his hand around my upper arm. His grip was bruisingly tight. I can still feel the heat of his palm, the moisture, the sheer power of an adult male against a child's frame. "You're making a scene," he hissed, through gritted teeth, yanking me toward the sedan. "Walk." I tried to scream, but my throat had closed up. It was like a nightmare where you try to yell, and only a squeak comes out. My feet skidded on the gravel. He was dragging me, now no longer pretending. We were 50 yards from the playground. The counselors were dots in the distance. No one was looking. He reached the car and popped the trunk with a key. It didn't make a mechanical thunk sound. It just creaked open. It was empty. He wasn't trying to put me in the back seat. "Get in," he snarled, shoving me toward the dark carpeted maw of the trunk. I planted my feet, grabbing the bumper with my free hand, my fingernails scratching against the paint. I finally found my voice. "No!" I screamed. "You're not my dad's friend," he struck me. A sharp, open-handed slap across the face that made my ears ring and tears spring to my eyes. The shock of the pain was paralyzing. "Shut up," he spat. He grabbed me by the waist, lifting my feet off the ground. I was airborne halfway into the trunk, the smell of gasoline and old carpet filling my nose. I kicked out wildly. My sneaker connected with something hard, his glasses. They flew off his face and skittered across the pavement. He swore instinctively, reaching for his face. For a split second, his grip on my waist loosened. That was my chance. I scrambled backward, falling out of the trunk and hitting the asphalt hard on my elbow. I didn't feel the pain. Adrenaline is a hell of a drug. I scrambled to my feet and ran. I didn't run toward the playground. In my panic, I ran toward the only other cover I saw, the woods. "Get back here, you little brat!" he roared behind me. I heard his heavy footsteps pounding the pavement, then the crunch of gravel. He was coming. I dove into the underbrush, the thorns tearing at my legs, the canopy of trees swallowing me whole. I ran until my lungs burned deeper into the green, shadowy unknown, with the monster right on my heels. The woods were a tangled mess of briar patches and poison ivy, but I tore through them like they were cobwebs. I could hear him behind me, heavy boots snapping dry twigs, his breathing ragged and angry. He was big, but I was small. That was my only advantage. I could duck under low-hanging branches that he had to shove aside. I didn't have a plan. I just had terror. Pure, distilled animal terror. I scrambled down a small embankment into a dry creek bed. The leaves here were thick and damp, muffling my footsteps. To my left, the roots of a massive oak tree had eroded, creating a dark, hollow cavity beneath the trunk. Without thinking, I threw myself into the hole, curling into a tight ball, pressing my face into the dirt to hide the white of my skin. I held my breath. My heart was hammering against my ribs so hard I was sure he could hear it like a drum in the silence of the forest. Crunch, crunch, crunch. He was at the top of the embankment. Michael. His voice wasn't shouting anymore. It was a low sing-song coo that made my skin crawl. "Come on out, buddy. I'm sorry, I got mad. I just don't want you to get lost. Your dad is going to be so worried." He was using the dad card again. A part of my brain, the logical part, screamed that maybe I was overreacting. Maybe he was a friend and I was just being a stupid kid. But then I remembered the trunk. I remembered the slap. I remembered the way his eyes had gone dead when I asked about the car seat. I squeezed my eyes shut. Don't move. Don't breathe. He slid down the embankment. He was standing in the creek bed, maybe 5 feet from where I was, curled up under the roots. I could see his shoes through the gaps in the wood. He stood there for what felt like an eternity, turning in a slow circle. "I know you're close," he whispered. It sounded like he was smiling. "I can hear you breathing." He took a step toward my hiding spot. I bit my lips so hard I tasted copper. Then a sound cut through the heavy summer air. A whistle, loud and shrill. "Micaiah. Micaiah. Michael." It was Brad's voice. They had finally noticed. They were looking for me. The man's shoes froze. He let out a sharp, frustrated curse, a word I wasn't allowed to say. He didn't look for me anymore. He turned and scrambled back up the embankment, moving fast, abandoning stealth. I heard him crashing through the brush, heading back toward the parking lot, away from the voices. I didn't move. I lay there in the dirt for another 10 minutes, shaking so violently my teeth chattered even in the heat. I only came out when I heard Brad's voice right above the creek bed. When I crawled out, covered in mud scratches and spider webs, Brad looked like he'd seen a ghost. I collapsed into tears. The police were called. My parents arrived in record time, my mom pale as a sheet, my dad looking like he wanted to kill someone. I told the officers everything. The car description, an old brown sedan, was dispatched, but without a license plate, there wasn't much they could do. But the most terrifying part came later that night at the kitchen table. The police officer asked my dad, "So you don't know anyone fitting that description? He knew your name, your son's name, and where you worked?" My dad shook his head, his face buried in his hands. "No, I've never seen him. I don't know who he is." That's when the realization hit us. This man hadn't just stumbled upon me. He had been watching us. He must have followed us to the grocery store, heard my mom call my name. He must have followed my dad to work to see where the plant was. He had studied our lives, learning the script, just waiting for a moment when the counselors were distracted and I was alone. I'm 35 now. I have kids of my own. I don't let them out of my sight at the park. Not for a second. Because every time I see an older man sitting alone on a bench just watching the playground, I feel that phantom grip on my arm, and I wonder if he's still out there driving that brown sedan with the empty trunk. We live in an era where we invite strangers into our lives constantly. We summon them to drive us in their personal cars, we stay in their guest bedrooms on vacation, and we meet them in parking lots to buy their used junk. It's normalized insanity. I learned the hard way that just because an app has a sleek interface and a star rating system, it doesn't mean the person on the other end isn't dangerous. This happened 3 years ago. I was 23, fresh out of college, and had just moved into a studio apartment in Chicago. The rent was astronomical, which meant my budget for furniture was practically zero. I was sleeping on a mattress on the floor and eating takeout, sitting on a cardboard box. I needed a couch. I scoured Facebook Marketplace for days until I found it. A pristine, charcoal gray sectional. The listing said, "Moving out of country urgently. Must go tonight. $50. $50 for a couch that looked like it cost $2,000. It was the deal of the century." I messaged the seller immediately. His profile name was simply David. No profile picture, just a default gray silhouette. He replied within seconds, "It's yours, but you have to come now." I'm turning in the keys to the landlord at 10 p.m. It was already 8:30 p.m. I didn't have a truck, but I had a friend, Marcus, who drove a beat-up Ford pickup. I called Marcus and begged him. He was hesitant. He had an early shift the next morning, but I promised him pizza and beer. "Where's the pickup?" Marcus asked as I climbed into his passenger seat. I checked the address David had sent. It's out in the suburbs, near the industrial district. About a 30-minute drive. "Weird place for an apartment," Marcus muttered, but he put the truck in gear. The drive was uneventful until we got off the highway. The GPS led us away from the residential zones and into a desolate stretch of warehouses and storage facilities. The streetlights here were sparse, casting long orange shadows across the cracked pavement. "You sure this is the right place?" Marcus asked, slowing down as we passed a row of fenced-off lots. "GPS says 200 yards. I said, though. My gut was starting to twist. Maybe it's one of those loft spaces, converted warehouses. We pulled up to the address. It wasn't a loft. It was a single-story cinder block building that looked like it used to be an auto repair shop. The windows were painted over with black paint. There was one car in the gravel lot, a white cargo van with no license plates. "Dude," Marcus said, keeping the engine running. "This looks sketchy as hell." "I'm not getting out." "Look," I said, trying to convince myself as much as him. "The guy said he's moving out of the country. Maybe he was using this place for storage. I'm not leaving without that couch, Marcus. It's $50. I pulled out my phone and messaged David. "We're here, in the pickup." Immediately, a metal side door of the building creaked open. A man stepped out. He didn't look like a threat. He was average height, wearing a hoodie and jeans, looking maybe in his late 20s. He waved at us, holding a phone up to show he was the guy. "See," I said, unbuckling my seatbelt. "He looks normal. Come on, help me load it up. We'll be gone in 5 minutes." Marcus sighed, turned off the truck, and we got out. The air was cold. The silence of the industrial park was heavy. "Hey, the man," Davide said as we approached. He had a thick accent I couldn't place. He was smiling, but his eyes were darting around, looking past us, scanning the dark road. "Glad you came fast. My flight is in 4 hours." "No worries," I said. "Is the couch inside?" Yes. "Just in the back." I dismantled it, so it is easier to carry. He held the metal door open for us. I stepped inside first. The interior was jarring. It didn't look like a place where someone lived, and it didn't look like a storage unit for furniture. The main room was empty concrete. No boxes, no suitcases, just a single folding chair in the center of the room and a tripod set up facing it. A weird smell hit me. Not rot, but chemicals. Bleach and ammonia sharp enough to sting the nose. "The couch is in the back room," Davide said, pointing to a heavy wooden door at the far end of the shop. He stepped in behind Marcus and closed the metal exterior door. I heard the distinct click of a deadbolt sliding home. Marcus heard it too. He froze. "Why'd you lock the door, man?" Davide's smile didn't waver, but his posture stiffened. "Wind blows it open." "Don't worry. Go look at the couch." I looked at Marcus. He gave me a look that screamed, "We need to leave." Actually, I said, my voice trembling slightly. "Can we just see a picture of it? We forgot to measure the truck bed. We might not fit it." "It will fit," Davide said. His voice was flat now. He wasn't asking. He was blocking the exit, standing between us and the only way out. He put his hands in his hoodie pocket. "Go to the back room." "Now?" "We're good, man," Marcus said, stepping forward aggressively. Marcus was a big guy, a former linebacker. "Unlock the door." Davi didn't flinch. He pulled his hand out of his pocket. He wasn't holding a gun or a knife. He was holding a stun gun. The electrical arc crackled loudly in the empty concrete room, a bright blue flash that made us both jump back. "The back room," Davide repeated. "Or you wake up in there anyway with a headache." I looked at the wooden door at the end of the room. It was slightly ajar. Through the crack, I could see plastic sheeting taped to the walls. This wasn't a robbery. He didn't want the $50. "Run," Marcus yelled. But there was nowhere to run. We were locked in a concrete box with a man holding a taser, and the only other exit led to a room wrapped in plastic. "Run," Marcus yelled, but the command hung in the air, useless. The deadbolt was engaged, and Davide stood between us and the only exit, the taser crackling like an angry hornet in his hand. The blue light strobed against the gray concrete walls, illuminating the plastic sheeting in the back room, a detail that made my stomach bottom out. That room wasn't for painting furniture. Marcus didn't wait for a plan. He operated on pure instinct. He was a big guy, a former high school linebacker, and he banked on his size being enough. He roared, a guttural sound that echoed in the empty shop, and charged at Davide. It happened in slow motion. Davide didn't step back. He stepped into the charge, thrusting the stun gun forward. Marcus collided with him, but the taser connected with Marcus's neck. My friend's body went rigid instantly. He convulsed his legs, giving out beneath him, and he crashed to the concrete floor with a sickening thud, taking Davide down with him. "Marcus!" I screamed. Davide scrambled to his feet faster than I expected. He was wiry and desperate. He kicked Marcus hard in the ribs, then turned his eyes on me. The taser had fallen a few feet away, skittering across the floor. I had a split second to make a choice. The heavy metal folding chair in the center of the room. I grabbed it. It was heavier than it looked. As Davide lunged for the taser, I swung the chair with every ounce of fear and adrenaline I possessed. The metal leg of the chair connected with the side of Davide's head. It wasn't a clean hit, but it was enough. He crumbled sideways, clutching his ear, a string of foreign curses spilling from his mouth. He looked dazed, blood beginning to seep between his fingers. "Get up, Marcus, get up," I yelled, dropping the chair and rushing to the door. My hands were shaking so bad I couldn't grip the deadbolt lock. It was a double-cylinder lock. It needed a key from the inside. Panic, cold and sharp, pierced my chest. We were still trapped. The key. Marcus groaned from the floor, clutching his neck. Get his pockets. Davide was trying to stand up, using the wall for support. He looked at me, his eyes unfocused, but filled with a level of hate I had never seen in a human being. He reached into his hoodie pocket, not for a key, but for a knife. A small, serrated switchblade flicked open. I looked at the floor. The keys weren't in his pocket. They had fallen when Marcus tackled him. They were on the concrete near the taser. I dove for them. Davide slashed at the air, missing my face by inches. I felt the wind of the blade on my cheek. I grabbed the keys and rolled, scrambling on my hands and knees back to the door. I jammed the key into the lock. It wouldn't turn. Wrong key. Come on, come on, I screamed at myself, tears blurring my vision. David was limping toward me, the knife raised. Marcus, still groggy from the shock, grabbed Davide's ankle. It wasn't much, but it made the man stumble. I tried the second key. Click. The bolt slid back. I slammed my shoulder into the metal door, and it burst open into the cool night air. Marcus, go. We tumbled out into the gravel lot. The silence of the industrial park was gone, replaced by the sound of our own ragged breathing and footsteps. We didn't look back. We sprinted to Marcus's pickup truck. I fumbled with the door handle, threw myself into the passenger seat, and locked it. Marcus practically fell into the driver's seat. He didn't bother with a seatbelt. He jammed the key in the ignition, revved the engine, and peeled out of the lot tires, spinning in the gravel, kicking up dust. As we sped away, I looked in the side mirror. David was standing in the doorway of the warehouse. He wasn't chasing us. He was just watching the knife, still in his hand, bathed in the yellow light from the open door. Then he calmly reached out and pulled the heavy metal door shut, disappearing back into the dark. We didn't stop driving until we were 3 towns over. We sat in a 7-Eleven parking lot, shaking, unable to speak. Marcus had a burn mark on his neck, the size of a quarter. We called the police. They raided the warehouse an hour later. David was gone. The white van was gone. But they found the kill room. The plastic sheeting was lined with zip ties and duct tape. They found a camera set up on a tripod recording, and in the corner they found a pile of IDs, driver's licenses, student IDs, passports, dozens of them. The police told us that Davide was likely a low-level procurer for a trafficking ring. He lured people in with high-value items, subdued them, and then transported them in the van before anyone knew they were missing. The flight in 4 hours story was just to create urgency so victims wouldn't think twice about the location or the time. I never bought that couch. I sat on the floor of my apartment for 6 months before I finally went to a brightly lit, overpriced furniture store. And even now, when I browse online and see a deal that looks too good to be true, I scroll past it. I know the price you really pay. We trust technology too much. We trust that the little map on our phone screen is accurate. We trust that the photo of the stranger matches the person behind the wheel. We trust the system. But systems glitch and predators know how to exploit those glitches. It was a Saturday night in late October. It was raining, a cold, miserable drizzle that blurred the streetlights of downtown Seattle. I had been out for a friend's birthday at a bar in Capitol Hill. I wasn't drunk, but I was exhausted. The music, the shouting, the crowded space, it had drained my social battery completely. By 1:00 a.m., I just wanted my bed. I stepped out of the bar and huddled under the awning to escape the rain. I pulled up my rideshare app. The surge pricing was high, but I didn't care. I requested a ride. The app pinged. Your driver Samuel is arriving in 4 minutes. Car black, Toyota Camry. I watched the little car icon on the map inch closer. The street was chaos, people spilling out of clubs, taxis, honking, buses, hissing. It was hard to see anything through the rain-streaked air. 3 minutes later, a black sedan pulled up to the curb right in front of me. It was a Toyota. I couldn't see the license plate because of the car behind it, but it matched the description. The window rolled down halfway. The driver was a guy in a baseball cap looking straight ahead. "For Justin?" he asked. His voice was muffled by the rain. "Yeah, that's me," I said, relieved to get out of the cold. I opened the back door and slid in. The interior was warm and smelled heavily of pine air freshener. I shook the rain off my jacket and settled back, pulling my phone out to check Instagram. "Rough night out there," the driver said as he pulled away from the curb, merging aggressively into traffic. "Yeah, just glad to be heading home," I muttered, not really looking up. We drove for a few minutes in silence. The rhythm of the windshield wipers was hypnotic. I closed my eyes for a second, letting the heat of the car thaw my frozen hands. Buzz. My phone vibrated in my hand, a notification. I looked down at the screen. It was a message from the rideshare app. "Samuel, hey, traffic is crazy. I'm stuck at the light on Pike. Be there in 2 minutes." My blood ran cold. I stared at the message, my brain trying to process the discrepancy. I looked at the map on the app. The little car icon, Samuel's car, was still 3 blocks away, stationary. I was in a moving vehicle. I looked up at the rearview mirror. The driver was watching me. His eyes were dark, narrowed in the reflection. He wasn't looking at the road. He was looking at my reaction. Is everything okay?" he asked. His tone had changed. It was no longer the casual service worker voice. It was tight, controlled. My heart hammered against my ribs. "Don't panic," I told myself. "Maybe the app is lagging. Maybe this is Samuel and the GPS is just wrong." "Yeah," I lied, my voice cracking slightly. "Just checking the time." I looked out the window. We weren't heading toward the highway. We were heading toward the industrial district, down toward the shipping yards. This was the opposite direction of my apartment. "Hey, I think you missed the turn back there," I said, sitting up straighter. "I live in Queen Anne." The driver didn't answer. He reached down to the center console. I heard a distinct mechanical thunk-thunk, the sound of the power locks engaging. "Hey," I said louder this time. "You're going the wrong way." "Pull over. Sit back, Justin," the driver said. He accelerated. The engine whined as we sped through a yellow light. "We're taking a shortcut." "I don't want a shortcut." "Let me out." I grabbed the door handle and yanked. Nothing. It wouldn't budge. I tried the lock tab near the window. It was a smooth plastic nub, the kind that sinks into the door panel when locked, impossible to pull up with fingers. Child locks. He had the child safety locks engaged. I said, "Sit back," he shouted, swerving the car violently to keep me off balance. My phone buzzed again. Another message from the real Samuel. "I'm here. Are you still at the bar?" I was trapped in a black sedan with a stranger who knew my name, heading into the darkest part of the city with no way to open the doors. "Who are you?" I demanded, pressing myself against the far door, my thumb hovering over the emergency button on the app. But what good would the app do? They would track Samuel's car, not this one. The driver laughed. It was a dry, humorless sound. "Does it matter? You got in. You confirmed the name. You made it easy." He knew my name because I had confirmed it. When he asked for Justin, he was fishing. If I had said no, he would have driven off. But I said, yeah. It's a trick predators use. They wait outside busy venues, look for people staring at their phones and take a guess. Or maybe he had been close enough to hear me tell the bouncer my name earlier. We were passing under the I-5 overpass now. The streets here were empty. No pedestrians. No witnesses. Just rows of concrete pillars and shadows. "What do you want?" I asked, my voice trembling. "I don't have cash. Take my phone." "I don't want your phone," he said softly. He slowed the car down as we approached a dark service road that led behind a construction site. "I just need a little help with something in the back." He pulled the car to a stop in the gravel, killed the headlights, and turned off the engine. The darkness was absolute. "Don't make this difficult," he said, unbuckling his seatbelt. I looked at the window. It was tinted but standard glass. I looked at the driver's headrest. It was detachable. I had seconds before he came around to the back door. The sound of the rain pummeling the roof was deafening, amplifying the isolation. I watched the driver's door open. The interior dome light didn't flicker on. He had disabled it. He stepped out into the mud, his boots making a wet, sucking sound. I didn't wait. I lunged forward, grabbing the passenger seat headrest with both hands. I pressed the release button and yanked upward. It stuck. Panic, hot and electric, surged through my veins. I gritted my teeth and pulled again harder, screaming silently in my head. With a metallic shh sound, the headrest popped free. I held it like a club, the two steel prongs facing outward. I scrambled across the back seat to the driver's side door, the side he wasn't approaching. I jammed the steel prongs into the gap between the window glass and the door panel, trying to use leverage to shatter the glass. But tempered glass is stronger than you think. It didn't break. It just bowed. Behind me, the rear passenger door, the one I had entered through, clicked. The door swung open. The cold, wet air rushed in, bringing the smell of wet earth and exhaust. The man stood there, silhouetted against the faint, distant glow of the city. He wasn't holding a gun. He was holding a roll of duct tape and a long, serrated hunting knife. "Come on out, Justin," he whispered. "Don't make me cut you." He reached into the car, grabbing for my ankle. I didn't pull away. I coiled my leg back and kicked out with everything I had. My boot connected squarely with his chest. He grunted, stumbling back into the mud, dropping the tape. But he held onto the knife. He roared a sound of pure animal rage and lunged back into the car, slashing blindly. The knife caught the fabric of the seat right between my legs, ripping through the upholstery. I swung the headrest. The heavy padded block of foam and steel connected with the side of his face with a sickening, meaty thud. The steel prongs grazed his temple. He howled, clutching his head, and staggered backward, slipping on the wet gravel. This was my only chance. I scrambled out of the car, my hands sinking into the freezing mud. I didn't try to fight him. I ran. I ran toward the skeleton of the construction site. It was a maze of concrete foundations, rebar sticking out of the ground like rusted spears, and deep pits filled with rainwater. "You're dead," he screamed from behind me. I heard the car door slam shut and his heavy footsteps splashing in pursuit. I didn't look back. I vaulted over a low concrete wall, scraping my shin so hard I felt the skin peel back, but I didn't stop. I ducked behind a stack of plywood, my breath coming in, ragged, sobbing gasps. I listened. He was coming. He wasn't running blindly. He was hunting. He was stopping every few seconds to listen, just like he had in the car. I realized with sinking dread that I had run away from the service road deeper into the dark construction zone. I was backed against a chain-link fence that bordered a drainage ditch. I saw the beam of a flashlight cut through the rain. He had a flashlight now. The beam swept over the concrete piles, moving closer to my hiding spot. "I know you're here," he called out. His voice was calm again. That was the worst part. The rage was gone, replaced by that professional, detached tone. "You dropped your phone in the car, Justin. I know where you live. If you run, I go there. If you come out now, we just talk." It was a lie, a predator's lie. I looked around desperately. To my right, there was a portable toilet. To my left, a parked bulldozer. I picked up a heavy rock from the mud. I waited until the beam of light swept away from me, and then I hurled the rock as hard as I could toward the bulldozer. It clanged loudly against the metal tread. The flashlight beam snapped toward the noise. The man sprinted toward the bulldozer, knife raised. I broke cover. I ran the opposite way toward the chain-link fence. I didn't try to climb it. It was topped with razor wire. I ran along the perimeter looking for a gap. I found a spot where the mud had washed away beneath the fence, creating a shallow depression. I threw myself onto my stomach and crawled. The mud filled my mouth, my nose, my ears. The razor wire above snagged my jacket, tearing the fabric, scratching my back. I squeezed through, tumbling down the muddy embankment on the other side, into the drainage ditch. The water was waist deep and freezing, but I waded through it, thrashing toward the lights of the main road about a quarter mile away. I didn't stop until I was standing in the middle of the road, waving my arms like a maniac. A semi-truck blared its horn and slammed on its brakes, the tires screeching on the wet asphalt. The driver, a burly man with a mustache, looked down at me from his cab, terrified by the mud-covered, bleeding figure, screaming for help. He's killing me! He's killing me! I was screaming, pointing back toward the dark construction site. The police arrived 10 minutes later. They swept the construction site with K9 units. They found the black Toyota Camry abandoned in the mud. The driver was gone. But they found the trunk. Inside, they didn't find something he needed help with. They found a plastic tarp pre-laid out. They found a shovel. They found a bag of lime. And they found a set of Polaroids. The photos weren't of people. They were of houses, front doors, bedroom windows. One of the photos was of my apartment building, taken from the street level. The car had been stolen 3 days prior. The driver was never identified. The fingerprints in the car were wiped clean, except for mine. The police think he was a serial stalker who used rideshare apps to intercept drunk, tired targets, learning their addresses before taking them to a secondary location. I don't use rideshare apps anymore. I don't care if it's raining. I don't care if I'm tired. I take the bus or I walk. And even when I'm walking, I check over my shoulder. Because sometimes late at night, when a black sedan slows down near me, I see that face in the window, the calm, detached look of a man who knows exactly who I am and is just waiting for me to make one more mistake. Being an adult isn't safer than being a kid. The monsters just get smarter. They learn to blend in. They learn to use our technology against us. And they are always, always watching.